And please, if my colleagues Dennis Zine and Janice Hahn would be made aware that the meeting is in session. We'll take matters up as a subcommittee until they arrive. Item number 1.
Item number 1 is a communication from the mayor relative to the reappointment of Dr. Yasmin Delahousse to the Human Relations Commission for the new term ending June 30th, 2012.
Is Dr. Delahousse in? Please. This is a reappointment.
A reappointment.
How long
yes.
have you been on the commission?
Yeah. How long have I been on the commission? It's been about a year and a half.
So tell me, how's it going?
It's going really well. First of all, I just wanted to also let you know, Richard, that Dr. Tyree Weeder sends her regards. Today is her last day at Los Angeles Valley College. She retires after 14 years. We had a party for her with 600 people there. We missed you.
Apologize, yeah.
But no
Another-
problem. I have a disc of the
wife's
actual
birthday.
event for you.
My wife's birthday, I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem, no problem. But anyway, I think that it is
You
going.
can't use Tyree Weeder to get yourself reappointed.
Oh, no. I just wanted to let you know that she sends her greetings to you. As far as the Human Relations Commission, I think it's going really well. I was a little bit disappointed with our budget, as with every other agency. We did have our budget cut. And as you know, every time you pick up the paper, if you read the paper this morning, I didn't get a chance to read the story fully, but we had the closing of the pool because workers were attacked in South LA. And it's, articles like that that just reinforces the work that the HRC is doing. Mm-hmm. And, we were hoping to be able to beef up our field staff rather than having to reduce our field staff. So it's just an indication of the work that we need to do. For those of you who don't know me, I work at Los Angeles Valley College. I've been an educator in the city of Los Angeles for over 35 years. I'm a graduate of Mount Vernon Junior High School and Los Angeles High School. Graduated from Cal State LA with a BA degree in history, a master's from Cal State Northridge, and a doctorate from UCLA. I currently teach at the School of Education at UCLA.
Notwithstanding all that education, you still feel you're qualified for the Human Relations
Oh,
Commission?
absolutely, because a lot of our conflicts in the city start in the schools.
Yeah.
So we really do need to see that link between
Actually,
education.
we know you're qualified for the position. I actually wanted to see what you have in mind moving forward, and what some of the challenges of the Human Relations Commission that you see and would like to be involved in.
Well, one of the biggest challenges
might be
is to get the strategic plan done, which I believe we've been given 90 days by the mayor to do. And then the other challenge
That's the strategic plan to do what? For the department, for the commission?
For HRC, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing that we are working on is we are working on a link between education and the HRC by using a lot of our connections out in higher education to bring important information to HRC that will assist them with doing their job. So, for example, we're talking about mapping the city in terms of different groups moving in and out of different areas of the city. So that would be one example. And there's just a lot of work that our subcommittees are working on, which I think will be very valuable to HRC in the future.
Now, the mayor had mentioned that he wanted to task the Human Relations Commission with some of the gang reduction responsibilities. Have you, what role do you see the Human Relations Commission playing in that responsibility?
Because they're going to have to do reorganization and go through reorganization at this point because of reduction in staff, we have to see at the end of the day what that's going to look like. Because, of course, there are a lot of priorities, and now we're going to have shifting priorities. But I think that HRC has always been known as a group willing to step in. The Watts Gang Task Force is a good example of the work that the HRC has done. So I'm sure that work will continue.
The Human Relations Commission in a city as large as Los Angeles, as diverse as Los Angeles is, one of the most diverse cities, if not the most diverse city in the world. Certainly, I think, was it USC or UCLA just came out with a study that said that we are the most diverse city in the country. And I don't know that any group of as small as the Human Relations Commission's group can really tackle all the problems. So it sort of leads one to the notion that you can teach, you can have somebody fish for a day, or you can teach them to fish for a lifetime. And so I'm wondering if what the Human Relations Commission is doing in terms of training other organizations, for example, faith-based organizations, to manage some of these human relations crises and events that might erupt in our city.
Well, for me, I think that a classic example of how HRC is able to do that is the work that was done at Grant High School. I actually work at Los Angeles Valley College, which is across the street from Grant High School. Mm-hmm. And HRC went in, and as you probably are very well aware by reading the newspapers, every October there's a riot at Grant High School between Armenians and Latinos. Mm-hmm. And HRC has actually gone in and done a lot of work with the ninth graders, mm-hmm. teaching them how to be peacekeepers at the school. And this is the kind of work that the HRC does, and this is the impact that it has on this city.
But that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's a direct service.
Right, exactly. And we need to do more of that.
What we really need to do is teach the school district or the administrators of the school how to manage that problem.
Exactly.
And I'm very well aware of the Grant High School situation because I responded, was it 2 or 3 years ago, to that event. And so again, if the Human Relations Commission is going to respond to these kinds of crises, I just don't think it has the resources, particularly with the focus that the mayor has asked on gangs. There's just too many gang-related shootings, too many gang-related incidents for the Human Relations Commission to be able to go directly, as opposed to being in a position to provide the training that is necessary to teach tolerance and alternative behaviors, and also mediation practices, and those are the kinds of things that I think the Commission ought to look to, particularly as they're devising their strategic plan. I would offer myself, just as a side note, to work with you on the strategic plan, and I've mentioned that to the rabbi that I'd be happy to offer whatever I could, because it's critical that I think the Human Relations Commission performs a vital service, but it can only do more, and in our city it's needed almost every week in every neighborhood, and with neighbors fighting, and I just would like to see us be more in the way of a trainer. I have a feeling Rabbi Freeling is back there bursting at the seams to respond, but I'm not going to let him, because he's not up for reappointment. So okay. Let me just say that I think you're not only are you certainly qualified for the position, you're a great representative for the San Fernando Valley, and I also would like to see Valley College engage in some of these activities. I'd like to see some, since you're the administrator, I might as well pull resources from you, but if you could create that core group that actually the Human Relations Commission worked with at Grant High School. Grant High School actually has a group of young people that solve their own problems, and
exactly.
But we need that at the community college level, and where they can go into the field and help. In fact, there were students at Valley College when I went to Poly High School who reached out to give us guidance, and it was actually about ending the Vietnam War, but nevertheless it was very helpful in my development. So with that, I will recommend you for approval. We'll wait for Dennis and Janice to come, and when they do, I'm sure they will approve of that as well.
Well, thank you.
Sure.
I
Thank you for
appreciate being here, and I appreciate your confidence in me.
Who's applying for the presidency at Valley College?
It's open right now,
Yeah,
so there's an acting president, but it will be open
okay.
in December.
Okay, well, good luck with that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Take care.
Item number 2 is a communication from the mayor relative to the reappointment of Ms. Lorraine Bradley to the Human Relations Commission for the term ending June 30th, 2012.
Hi, Lorraine. You heard my questions, so I'll let you respond to the questions that I already asked, and I don't know whether you were able to consult with Rabbi Freeling, but so tell me how you would respond to the questions I asked. You know a little bit about this city government.
Not much. Obviously, as you said, we can't solve every problem that arises in the city. We're not a big enough staff. We would have liked to have increased, as was stated, but we will do what we have with what we have. And but obviously, the training, as you pointed out at Grant, part of the reason for that student involvement is because we trained them so that they could go out and solve some of their own problems. And again, every place we go, that is obviously one of our main goals, because as you said, we can't be there every day for everything. Same thing at Santee Dairy and Jefferson High School. We trained the students so that they could take care and understand what was needed to do so that they could help their fellow students cope. And I think we did an excellent job there, as we do every place we go. And so our main goal is to train the people there so that they can then carry on and handle the problems that arise in their communities. Same thing with neighborhood councils, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, I'll give you a question I didn't give.
okay.
Yasmin, and that is, the commission participated in an effort that I've initiated to create what I call a Worship Watch program. Similar to Neighborhood Watch, this is a program to engage religious facilities in safety programs specific to their facility, but also in doing so to inform them about what is going on in the community. Now, you can't really run a Worship Watch program like you run a Neighborhood Watch, where they meet once a month.
Right.
And you just, typically the ministers are very, very busy. They're not able to participate at that level. Or they're already participating in their own Neighborhood Watch,
Correct.
and they don't need to. And you certainly, when you do a Neighborhood Watch program and you tell people about the crime in the neighborhood,
Make them more aware of what's going on.
you really don't have to do that for the church. But
Right.
the notion that I'm trying to express is similar, where we should look at our religious institutions and their facilities to securitize them, to make sure that they are in a position to be safe. That sometimes they have a safety issue that they're not even aware of by virtue of the physical plant that they have. Or they may be in a position to help solve other problems in the community, and we want to engage them. So it's not just that we're watching the worship facilities, but we're hoping that the worship facilities are watching the community. And
Correct.
And it's a dual.
Well, I know when there's problems, that arise, it may be focused in one small area, but it affects a larger area. And I know we always try to contact the churches and the local groups in that area when we go in, we don't assume we know everything. So we always make contacts with the local groups so that we know what has gone on, what's happening, and connect so that we can not duplicate everything that's been done before, so that we can move forward in efforts to solve the problem.
I should mention that the the reason we formed the Worship Watch was because 3 religious facilities were attacked with firebombs, and that's why
Yeah.
they weren't related. And I think the police department is moving in, but the idea is that they are a presence in the community that can be relied on in many ways and can be upgraded in terms of their own safety and security that might bring benefits to the community.
Correct.
So I'm hoping that the Human Relations Commission continues in that effort, and the director is nodding yes as I
course.
speak. So, and finally, just let me say that the greatest honor in my life was to work for your father,
Thank you.
and he was a great mentor to me and allowed me to serve in a leadership position in his administration. When I don't know that anybody else would have, so quite often when I'm in my position, I ask myself, what would Mayor Bradley do? And so right now, I have a feeling he would say yes to this appointment. So I'm going to say yes to this.
Thank you,
appointment.
appreciate that.
Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
Item number 3 is a communication from the mayor relative to the reappointment of a Ms. Julie Chavez Rodriguez to the Human Relations Commission for the new term ending June 30th, 2012.
Right, Julie, it seems like you were just here.
Yep,
How long ago was it?
9 months.
Has it been 9 months? Wow.
Time flies.
So what's new?
Well, I think you heard from the other commissioners. Right now is an exciting time, I think, for the HRC in being able to utilize the strategic plan to really focus our efforts and continue to, have a strong impact in the communities that we're working in and serving. I think you said it best, just the size of the city as well as the oftentimes magnitude of the issues that the HRC is engaged in dealing directly with are much larger than the current capacity of the HRC. And so I think it's critical understanding the budget, issues that the city is in to ensure that we're being, as strategic and as impactful as possible with the resources that we have available to us. And so I know that that's an exciting opportunity for me coming in as a fairly new commissioner to be able to be a part of and to be able to be supportive of. And I know in looking at, again, just some of the direction that the HRC has been going in. You earlier had asked the question about the gang support. Actually, one of our field staff members who was a strong asset to the HRC has now joined the gang reduction and youth development efforts. And I'm sure you're familiar with Michael's work because he's done a lot of work in the Valley. But I think that demonstrates really the fact that the HRC is not just serving our communities. It's also helping to develop, additional
bad.
kind of.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Go ahead.
But it's also helping to develop, I think, strong leadership that's continuing to serve the city in other arenas, including in the gang reduction work. And I think that Michael's work with the HRC, was really attributed to his development and being able to then take on the efforts, under the gang reduction and youth development program. So I think that's an exciting opportunity. Similarly, we're also making a critical shift in terms of how we're working in and with communities around, and also kind of tied to some of the services that we've been providing for other city departments. And so another one of our members who was so effective in working with the fire department has now been actually, brought on board and is working full-time with the fire department. So again, I think that's really attributed to the leadership within HRC helping to continue to cultivate and develop, real, I think, human relations experts. It's not really a field that's always easy to quantify or easy to, develop certain levels of expertise in unless you're actually in the field and on the ground. Being able to work in and with neighborhoods and in a variety of different capacities, and I think that's what they've done extremely well. And now it's sort of an exciting point to really look at how do we continue to move that forward and continue to serve the city in the best way possible.
One thing, it's interesting, that was my daughter who called, but I was just going to ask you a question about something my daughter was involved in. She worked in the Justice Department under the Clinton administration, and she wrote a procedures manual for how to respond to hate crime in a community. Her task was in the aftermath of that man that was dragged in Texas,
Is it Matthew?
and so she actually wrote that policy. Do we have a policy and procedures manual for how communities might respond to serious either hate crimes or a gang violent incident, or do we have any kind of policy and procedure, or at least a procedures manual on how a community should respond, what resources should come together, and is that something that the Human Relations Commission might take on?
I think that would be, a great opportunity for us, like you said, to empower communities and really ensure that we're teaching people how to fish rather than just serving them, as oftentimes, we do through direct service programs. At this point, I believe that we have, internal documents that our field staff work from to be able to respond to certain areas. A lot of it is sort of a process of being able to go in and do some initial analysis of what's happening on the ground, and coupling that with also a level of, I think, asset mapping in terms of looking at what resources are available within each of these respective, within each of the communities that they're sort of responding to. I don't know that it's to the point where it's yet been transferred to have a manual for the community on how the community can respond. And I think that that's a great suggestion, and something that I know I'll take back to the rabbi, even though he's sitting behind us, because I do think.
I think we just did.
Well, for formality's sake, I feel though I need to say that, but I think that's and continuing to look at how again do we really build capacity in communities, because I think a lot of the work that the Human Relations Commission does is really around community building, and so how do we ensure that our communities have the capacity to?
Yeah, I don't think that document would be reinventing the wheel. There are, first of all, the Justice Department does have that document. Secondly, the City Attorney's Mediation Services have a lot of documents that would be helpful. It would just be a question of weaving it in a way that it is tailored to the City of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So I would offer that, and would certainly offer to lend assistance.
Great. I think
You too have a tremendous legacy that you carry forward as Ms. Bradley, and we are truly blessed in the City of Los Angeles to have you as one of our citizenry, and your grandfather's legacy will inspire, generations to come, particularly because of the holiday, which, as you know, my sister was instrumental in making happen. So, how could I say no? But I know you take your own personal accomplishments very seriously, and it's sort of in the blood, and so. Please continue success, and we hope that the Human Relations will benefit from that legacy. But
thank you very much.
Do you have any questions?
Well, I don't have any questions, but I certainly do want to voice my support for you as well, and I kind of understand that legacy thing, and how important it is for us to embrace our legacy, but make our own marks as well, which certainly you've done. And I just, you've already done the other two. I was trying to get here. It's just so hard from San Pedro. But I just want to say how important the Human Relations Commission is to the City of Los Angeles. And I have grown to have such incredible respect for the commission. Rabbi Freeling's leadership has just been phenomenal, and I represent a very challenging part of the City of Los Angeles. But the Human Relations Commission has been instrumental for me in Watts, particularly in relationship to what we're trying to accomplish with relationships between the community and LAPD, relationships between each other, And I just really want to encourage you and thank you for being willing to step up and serve in this capacity. But know that great work has been done, but so much more needs to be done in this city. And I really look at your commission as being just so pivotal and so important, almost more than any other commission out there. Because you know what? If people can't get along, if people can't enjoy who they are and their neighborhoods, then really everything else we're doing has very little meaning. If there's still violence and people feeling threatened and oppressed because of who they are or what color their skin is. So anyway, we're here to help you. I'm the commission's biggest fan, and whatever I can do to partner with you, please let me know. So I wholeheartedly support you and the others that went before you on this morning.
Great. Well, thank you all for the opportunity to serve the city. And I think, to your point, if people can't feel safe in their homes and in their neighborhoods, then, it's a real thorn in the side of the city to continue to develop in other ways. And so I think it's critical, and that's why I'm here to serve. So thank you all very much.
Take care.
Thank you.
With that, well,
Are you waiting for me?
I was waiting for you, yeah. Ms. Hahn,
I move approval of the...
of items 1, 2, and 3, and I concur, so, thank you.
Item number 4 is a motion, Han Gruel and Department of Neighborhood Empowerment report relative to requesting the Neighborhood Council Review Commission to discuss the idea of requiring that all Neighborhood Council board members be given training on sexual harassment at regular intervals.
Good morning. Bangwan Kim, Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. This is a follow-up for a request on a report back to assess the feasibility of providing sexual harassment training. We inquired with the Personnel Department and ITA, and we have a report that we submitted to share with you this morning. Basically, Personnel Department is responsible for providing sexual harassment training to all city employees. When we conferred with them, they informed us that there was a 20-minute training video that currently exists, and that could, with slight modifications, could be shared with all NC board members with nominal cost. So it is our recommendation, given the budgetary situation that we're facing, that our sense, and I watched the video myself, it's a 20-minute piece, pretty straightforward, but explains the basics of what sexual harassment is not, and in all the various contexts dispels a lot of myths about what it is. But I think it's a very educational piece. And if the council wished to do so, we would include the DVD in our new board member orientations, provide copies of the DVD to all elected board members. We may also make the website contain a video that they could just watch at their own convenience. But those are some options that currently exist in terms of providing this training.
Well, this was actually saying requiring,
Right.
you would require the neighborhood councils to play it?
That's the motion that currently exists. If you do want to pass the requirement portion of that policy question, then we would go in a different direction, and we'd have to discuss that. But it wasn't clear to us that that's what the committee wished.
Well,
at this
no,
point.
it's not. We haven't taken a position at all,
Right.
but the motion says, discuss the idea of requiring that all neighborhood
Yes.
council board members be given the training. So is there anything to prohibit us from requiring it? I don't think so, but I'm just asking.
No, Gwen Poindexter, city attorney, there isn't anything to prohibit it. It's the vehicle that we would have to analyze to see how that would be done. Normally, I would recommend it has to be in the plan or the ordinance if you're going to make a requirement on the neighbor councils that currently don't exist. But I haven't given that any thought, so we have to figure that out.
I'm curious to know why the 912 Commission didn't take this up. Or was it an issue? Was it a yeah.
Did they see the 20-minute video?
Or was it ever brought up? Was it an issue? Was there any thinking on this issue?
Rafe Sonnenschein, Neighborhood Council Review Commission. This was not brought up to the commission, but one of the things the commission was very wary of was mandating training for all board members when we didn't know the scope of the actual problem. Because one of the issues that kept coming up for us is, what do you do if somebody doesn't take the training? Because it's an implementation question.
Right.
In other words, do you create a complaint
Right.
against somebody, especially in a board that has no problem with it? So what we were concerned about was, in general, making training voluntary, encouraged, pursued, except in cases where there's a documented problem, and then there would be some question about whether it could be imposed. But we are in general not in favor of imposing broad requirements for training that would create a lack of compliance in the absence of knowing that it was really necessary to do. And there were many areas that were brought forward about training. So we sort of took a broad position about training as a result of that.
Okay.
I think that that if you send a 20-minute video to all the neighborhood councils, they'd probably see it. I think 100% of them would watch it. And if you require it, there may be a couple that are offended, and I don't know that that's necessary. Why don't we? What my recommendation would be that we ask the director to send the videotape to. Is it going to be a budget problem, or?
It doesn't seem like it. It seems
Just
like,
guess, right?
yeah.
So you could just
It could be copied at minimal cost. Probably total cost to reproduce would be about $500.
Well, that certainly could be absorbed by the department, couldn't it?
We could take that
And,
on, yes.
So then, why don't we have you send copies of the 20-minute tape to all the neighborhood councils? Ask them to play it in their meeting
Mhm.
and report back. Ask, yeah, if you ask them for their opinion about it, they'll watch it. You know, they'll probably give you their opinion about it. And that might also help us improve it. But
Mhm.
but I think, and then we'll hold the matter in committee and come back in 6 months and see what happened.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that's a good approach.
Okay.
And we feel like at this point we have a good mechanism for any sort of complaints.
Yeah.
We feel like it's a safe environment if someone was feeling harassed, that they could make that complaint.
That's a work in progress.
Okay.
A work in progress.
Because obviously, I mean, I was trying to remember the nexus for this motion, and I can't remember
Yeah.
what was going on, but obviously something was going on. And it must have been severe enough that we felt that there was some neighborhood councils out there where there was a hostile environment. Because I don't think we would have just made this up because we wanted one more requirement.
Yeah,
So I just want to
I'm-
make sure if we're going to just make it, if we're not going to make it mandatory, I just want to make sure we feel like there's a vehicle for someone to express complaints.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get a better feel for how the department should approach neighborhood councils that are experiencing hostile situations. It's every neighborhood council is unique, as you know. Required training, I feel comfortable in providing. After that, it's not clear if the perpetrators continue and they're elected board members, what our actual policies and procedures should be in those cases. But I think we need something to deal with it. But at some point when it's appropriate, we're also discussing that with the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners in terms of there's a language in the plan refers to exhaustive measures in terms of remedies that the department would take with neighborhood councils who are quote unquote dysfunctional. Part of that could include hostile environments where there could be sexual, racial issues and dynamics.
Okay, if there are no more questions, by the way, we don't have any public comment cards on any of these items?
None of the items so far.
Okay, thank you. Then that will be the order, and we'll have this matter back in 6 months to see how it went. Item number 5.
Item number 5 is a Department of Transportation report dated June 6, 2008, in response to a motion, Han Gruel, relative to the Neighborhood Council Communication Project and memorandums of understanding with neighborhood councils.
morning.
Good morning.
Rita Robinson, Department of Transportation. Since our last meeting, we went back and we found the MOU, the draft MOU, and the surrounding discussion that resulted from that draft MOU from 2006. And from that discussion, we met with Mr. Cooper, Mr. Schoenstein, and Mr. Kim regarding the issues regarding how neighborhood councils could best connect. Not only those four, which the draft MOU addressed, but all neighborhood councils in the environment that we have today. So as a department, I've decided we won't go with an MOU with those four neighborhood councils because the environment for how neighborhood councils operate in today's environment is a much broader prospect. Although we will follow the procedures in the intent of what that MOU was trying to put forth. I'm not sure all of the incidents that were involved in 2006, but in discussing it, Mr. Schoenstein and Mr. Cooper, in meeting with them, there were moments where they felt that the city was not responsive, the department was not responsive to issues of the neighborhood councils at all. So since that time, we've taken major steps with regard to forming a liaison, a procedure, and as I mentioned before, following the practice with planning, which I think is a very good time for planning and transportation to link together at the hip, as many of you have requested of us and many community members have, to form an alliance that will address the neighborhood council issues in a more cohesive and broader scope, and having a constant liaison that will be directly involved with them, as well as keeping a direct link with the NCRC recommendations, because we feel strongly that those are important for the direct linkage and strengthening of our broader community to the principles and the processes that the department has to deal with. We know that transportation is a major issue for many individuals on a day-to-day basis, so we want to have as broad a scope of linkages with those, not only neighborhood councils, but many homeowner associations I've attended, and just general grassroots community processes. That includes the bus riders union, the taxi alliance, all of the things that are so important to the community from that perspective. So in response directly, Mr. Alicante, to your concern regarding what do we do with this file, my recommendation would be to receive and file the file on the MOU. However, you can hold the department's feet to the fire on the intent of what that MOU represented at that time, that those recommendations, and since the growth of the NCRC recommendations, we would continue to work in that vein to work with those neighborhood councils and others to make sure that we address some of their early notification issues, their participation, their advisory notes, and many of those neighborhood councils I've met with personally in order to get that input with our department and how we can best help them. We've also taken a major step with the advice and assistance of Mr. Schoenstein is to send out a survey to all neighborhood councils, both electronically and written, to request how we can best link with them and be of assistance to them as a department. What kinds of things do they want to find out from us? What kinds of things are concerns to them, so that we can then link better with Mr. Kim with regard to the intent of what his department wants to do, to kind of have I would say, a total positive circle of solution to this issue. So those are some of the things that we're doing in lieu of an MOU specific to 4 neighborhood councils, since there are 87 of them now that we're trying to work with.
I'm still not getting a clear picture of why did you not want to do an MOU?
I did not want to do an MOU with only 4 neighborhood councils that address what 87 of them and others need.
Okay, now how did DWP do it?
I'm not exactly sure how DWP did it, although
So
in
you
terms
didn't
of
investigate it.
not in terms of how DWP did it. I think Mr. Kim might have a better idea of how DWP did it, but
I'm
I'm
not
sure,
familiar
I'm sure
with
he
the.
does, but I'm looking to the department.
that as a
The fact is that there's an MOU with DWP, and I would think that if we're going to make a decision about whether to continue or not, the Department of Cultural Affairs has an MOU with 1 neighborhood council. But I would think that before saying no to Ms. Han's motion, that you would have explored all the possibilities.
Well, I explored all their
Have you- have you
possibilities
worked-
regarding the
have you worked
intent.
have you worked with Ms. Hahn's office to strategize the purposes of this motion?
Not with Ms. Hines' office directly. We worked with Mr. Kim and Mr. Shorenstein and Mr. Cooper, who were
They didn't make the
The-
motion.
they were the impetus for, my understanding, for how the motion got, or for how the MOU discussion began, as I discussed with the staff that was there at the time.
I don't know, Ms. Hahn, you made the motion.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, I think there was a little bit of a frustration on my part, frankly, and you can kind of feel that when you read this motion. That really, DOT is really a department that, as you just articulated, really is one of those departments that neighborhood councils feel pretty strongly about kind of relating to. Neighborhood councils are now having a better relationship with planning, and we know that now most people think planning and transportation go hand in hand. The DWP MOU took a lot of work, and there was a lot of Saturdays involved. But I think it's beneficial. And, you know, this one, again, when it says, this really shouldn't even be as difficult as DWP. DWP was about specific timelines and requirements on the department before they could impose a fee. This kind of isn't even that complicated. And I think it would go a long way towards, you know, I don't know, developing a relationship between the department and neighborhood councils as it relates to transportation issues. I think the whole traffic count issue when it comes to a proposed development in a particular neighborhood is very volatile out there and really insightful with neighborhood councils. I mean, they feel like we have an outdated, outmoded, antiquated formula on traffic counts. That really, you know, they're feeling, they kind of feel like it's the department against the neighborhood. It shouldn't be like that. You articulated it beautifully on how we should be working together with a lot of stakeholders. But frankly, the neighborhood councils are our number one anointed stakeholders in the city of Los Angeles. And, you know, I really still have not heard a good reason why we cannot go forward with an MOU.
The purpose of an MOU between, in the case of the DWP, and the neighborhood council system was to primarily establish a process for communication. It wasn't to dictate policy. The purpose of an MOU between the Department of Transportation and the neighborhood council system is to develop a process for communication. I see no difference between the two. It's not declaring policy. You cannot compare the neighborhood council system to Bus Riders Union or to what you call other grassroots. No, this is the neighborhood council system. It's part and parcel of the city government. And they should not be treated as non-entities of the city. They are part of our structure. The way that DWP worked with the neighborhood council system was to allow for the neighborhood council system to identify representatives of neighborhood councils to form a group that negotiated a memorandum of understanding with DWP, took it back to the neighborhood councils, they endorsed it, but the group continued to work as part of the process. So it wasn't as if they had 90 MOUs. They have one. And yet they feel they reach out to, I don't know how many neighborhood councils participate in that process, but there's a way to do this. The point is whether you're going to embrace the neighborhood council system as a way to organize to get more support for the kinds of transportation things we need, or you're going to shun them and treat them as if they're an obnoxious child.
Councilman, may I, Rafe Sunshine Neighborhood Council Review Commission, we took up this question at considerable length and looked at the DWP and the Department of Planning and other departments, some of which had MOUs and some of which did not. And after a lot of debate, including noticing that planning had developed a very successful program for embracing neighborhood councils without an MOU and intended not to have an MOU, we determined overwhelmingly that departments should not be required to utilize an MOU unless they thought that was the vehicle. So I think what we then did was write a long series of detailed ways to show how departments could embrace and must embrace neighborhood councils with or without MOUs. And from what I've seen, what the general manager of DOT is proposing is therefore fully consistent with the NCRC recommendations, which do not treat the MOU as the only way to do that. Some departments would find that actually better to use an MOU than not. Others might consider it a way of restricting what they're able to do. So in a sense, the NCRC intervened in this debate by looking at what departments were doing and not thinking of the MOU as the only way to get there, but focusing the departments on getting there. In fact, in exactly the words you were expressing, Councilmember Alarcon, which is to embrace the neighborhood councils, draw them into the decision process early, make sure they tell the department what they need to know, which is the stage they're at now. So,
How does DOT do that? What's the alternative to an MOU? Are we meeting the standard?
Well, that's what we're attempting to do, is to find out from them how we can embrace them by the survey. So we have the survey ready to go, to reach out to them, working with the review committee to make sure that we're consistent with their recommendations. And frankly, since it was one of the options of many options, and it was only with 4 neighborhood councils, because it appears from your description of the DWP action, it was with the system more than just individual neighborhood councils.
Where did you get the 4? Where did the 4 come from?
It was 4. It was Mar Vista.
But I mean, where did
San
those?
Pedro.
Where did they?
I'm not sure how that was what the draft MOU was with 4 neighborhood councils. So that's when we went back and got the draft.
If I used your method, I wouldn't have been elected, ever. We need a government that's proactive.
And
we
that's
need a
what-
government that reaches out to them, not just to say, what do you think I should be doing? They want to know what you propose to do.
Absolutely.
So my question is, what are we proposing to the neighborhood councils as to how to work with them?
We're
What-
We're proposing to follow many of the steps that planning has, in fact, with the early warning system with regard to, as developers bring forth their projects, to make them part of the process from day one. So they're aware of what we have at the same time
You make them
that
part
the
of the
department
process,
is.
meaning how you're going to do that.
Or what their input is with regard to the projects that are there. How will it impact their communities?
How?
What feedback is.
Tell me how they're going to have impact.
By asking them to form, and many of them do have traffic and transportation committees within their neighborhood
Okay,
councils.
so do we have like a document that was sent out to the neighborhood council that we can look at as a committee?
Well, we can look at the survey that we're sending to them, and then we can prepare a document for you for how we plan on pursuing this, because we just began meeting with planning to mirror their process.
MOU or a verbal agreement doesn't mean, it means the same, it's the same thing. City attorney, it's a contract, but however we do it, we still need to know, this committee needs to know that it's happening.
Absolutely.
So what I would like to see is a proposal from DOT as to how to do it. DWP didn't wait for the neighborhood councils to say, how do we do it? No, they went to them and said, this is what we propose, and then they went back and forth a little bit, but they basically had a proposal. But it was DWP that similarly, could you imagine, come on, you can't wait for 90 different organizations to come in with one proposal.
We're not waiting for them. It's not my intention to say that we're waiting for them. What we wanted to get is their input for those issues that they feel were important to include in our
Ease
process.
this thing,
So
throw a survey at it. What I want is for you to go to the neighborhood councils with a proposal as to how to relate to them in a specific way, so that they know, whether if it's a transportation planning issue, they know who their primary contact is. They know they can conduct an initial information meeting with so and so. What are the steps to work with
and
DOT?
I think for me,
certainly do that.
I was hoping it would be more than just, we're going to give them early notice so they can weigh in on the project. They already have that. Neighborhood councils already weigh in on development projects. So it has to be more than just them telling you how they'll be impacted. Again, they're questioning our formulas. They're questioning how we come up with traffic counts. That's more of where I think they would want to be it almost would help to create policy. They already weigh in on development projects. You're not giving them, that's not anything that they don't already have.
And
So
I think-
I was thinking an MOU would be a little bit more, I don't know what the word
I was planning to offer Dunn's resources in terms of organizing regional forums. So I'm going to do that on a regular
I was
basis
gonna
anyway.
ask you, how can you work with?
And I just talked with Rita about joining me in those regions so that if you give us some time, we could go and
Yeah.
directly meet with them and ask them what kind of relationship
Okay.
do you want and what
Good.
are the specifics, and then we could probably return to you with the results of that.
Well, but I'm going to say this again. I think that's the wrong way to do it. You can do it. You should do it. You should say, what do you want, and let them say. But to set up a process from me to the neighborhood councils, I'm going to tell them what I think, this is what I can offer
Right.
for our
That's a good point,
relationship.
yeah.
Rather than have 90 of them come back to me with how they want to relate to me, I'd have 90 different ways.
Right.
That's not proactive. That's not how I got elected. I got elected because I went to the community and said what I wanted to do. That's what you should do.
And we totally
Because
agree.
when you don't do that, then it affects us. And we don't like that.
We will have
And so-
communication to and from. We will propose something to
But
them
what I'm
with
more
regard to
concerned
that.
with is what the department is recommending to the neighborhood council system as to how to establish an effective working relationship with the neighborhood councils. The challenge is yours. The challenge isn't theirs. All they have to do is assign one person chair of the transportation committee, and boom, they're done. The challenge is how you're going to develop a system internally to
Right.
relate to 90 different neighborhood
Right.
councils.
And I would hope the two of you would regularly, I always think our general managers should also be going to lunch once a week on a project like this. Talk to each other. You know the neighborhood council systems, you know the Department of Transportation. Seems to me the two of you could really, again, do just what Richard talked about. Decide what it is your department can offer to build this relationship between the neighborhood council.
You know, when Mayor Bradley,
you guys
when I
should be
worked for Mayor
talking
Bradley,
a
you
lot.
mentioned Mayor Bradley, let me say that when I worked for Mayor Bradley, we had this guy, he was kind of funny, I think you know him, Bill Bicker.
Yes.
And he came to me and he said, Richard, I got this crazy idea, and the other area deputies are a little skeptical about it, but I'm hoping that you'll believe in it. He said, we need to understand what the community wants us to do. We want to be responsive to them. So I want to create what I call mobility action teams. Mobility action teams are bringing the community in to make complaints about specific issues, like if the traffic signal timing is off at a particular corner, so that DOT could be responsive. Frankly, what he really said was, all those people who complain to you, who call up screaming, you don't know what you're doing, the transportation is a mess, put them on a committee. And we put 50 of them on a committee, all the biggest complainers I could find in transportation. And you know that the first year we fixed 84 problems that DOT didn't know were out there. Things, I kid you not, one guy even recommended, that signal is off by at least a second. And it was off by 1 second with the study. I couldn't believe it. We added dual left-hand turn lanes. Jose de Sosa, I remember, recommended that one. We had recommendations from every one of these people, and we solved 84 things in the very first year. These people can tell us where the problems are with more specificity than even a council member can. And so that's why I want, if you'd like to speak, please fill out a card and we have public comment. But how do we establish that system without burdening the system? They can't tell us that. All they're going to say is, we want more. You can tell us what your limits are. But just to say that, we're going to reach out with no definition.
I hear you loud and clear, and certainly
Close to it.
it is not my intention at all to.
I'm going to be asking every department to do this. There's nobody excluded from this.
It's certainly not
If
my intention
EWP
to
can do it.
eclipse them, because I know how important they are, and certainly I've met with many of them, not all of them, but many of them in my tenure to discuss. So we hear your recommendation loud and clear, and
Okay.
we'll proceed.
Then, if we could have a report back in 30 days, because we've had long enough to mess around with this issue, I want to report back in 30 days on this. And then so we'll continue this item until.
you.
Thursday.
Mr. Chair,
Thank you.
if I could
And there's a
just,
speaker card on this item?
if I can just say that the reason I am late is I was at EERC, and we just completed EERC.
Okay, no
Thank
problem.
you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I neglected public comment, Zuma Dog.
Yeah, and
I just wanted to ask a question while you're here.
No, ma'am, you're going to have to fill out a.
She just
a
did. She
card.
just did.
Well, I wrote
Oh,
my name and I'll put
But
in
you're,
the particulars.
you're
but-
next.
Zuma Dog.
Zuma Dog was first.
Huh?
Zuma Dog was first.
That man over there, the dog man.
No, Zuma.
Oh, you want it to be in order? Yes. I wish Eric Garcetti would take control of the council meetings like this.
On the subject.
Yes. Okay, well, first of all, the neighborhood council system in general, I'm very concerned. I think it's just degenerated into a corrupt RICO violation racket, and I think it sets the city up for major problems. To talk about, yeah, they take input. First of all, let's look what happened with the elections. People got their absentee ballots after the elections. Some elections, 12, 13, 14-year-olds are allowed to vote. LAUSD teachers sent out memorandums on paper with the voting slate of candidates and handed them to the teenagers of the school and said, here you go over and vote. Okay, that is against the spirit of the community. And it doesn't do any good, by the way, if you have council members using city vehicles to transport voters over to the polls on their city vehicles with city people, to try to overtake the elections, And when you address council members under these types of things, you know what the answer is? You have no proof. That was not the answer I was looking for. A no, we did not do that would have been the appropriate answer. So I'm here to say that the neighborhood council has been taken over. If you believe that City Hall is corrupt under Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, and that City Council then would be corrupt, neighborhood council is an extension. Yes, corrupt. I say disband the neighborhood council system. I used to support it.
Okay.
And also,
Zuma.
one more final.
You're speaking on item number 5?
Yes, it's a communication project memorandum of understanding. This is what I'd like the memorandum of understanding to convey to neighborhood councils. Also, so if I had to convey something, it'd be we need to totally throw out these bogus elections that just took place.
That is not the subject at hand. The subject is an MOU between the DOT and.
That's why I wanted my.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dog.
It's Issa K. Mexon. I'll fill out the details. I was just in a hurry because this issue came up, and I wanted to ask a question. On the transportation, I live in Echo Park. The Dodgers want to expand. The Dodgers, as everyone knows, is a major drawing point. There is no public transportation to the Dodgers. We think this is bizarre, to put it mildly.
Okay, so you're going to have to speak to the.
Well, the
item.
issue is, can there be, if she's talking about relationships with neighborhood council, how can we involve DOT to work with neighborhood council? Our neighborhood council, I'm on the Parks and Public Works Committee, and we have had meetings with the Dodgers. The Dodgers would like public transportation, and well, how can the two work together? DOT, Dodgers, public transportation. Work it out somehow, but get that public transportation to the Dodgers and help ameliorate not having how many thousands of cars.
Yeah.
Impacts our neighborhood.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the idea of the Dodgers expansion and the notion of an MOU on.
It's the
and-
problem.
And the issue of an MOU relative to large projects, I couldn't think of a better example, where there's a strong history of controversy, and we can resolve that by proactively addressing it.
Mr. Chair, if I can respond to that briefly. I spoke to Mr. Sunken, the representative from the Dodgers, who said they tried this a couple years ago, and they're considering bringing it back, where there will be a shuttle service to Dodger Stadium. They did it at one point down Sunset Up. I know the congestion you're talking about. I've seen it when I've gone to the stadium. We need to have that. Well, the subject is, neighborhood councils have an issue, a concern. The Dodgers are working on it. That's the subject.
No, the subject is item number 5, which is the MOU with DOT. Let's stay on
And that's part of it. DOT would be working with the Dodgers to make that happen.
We can briefly respond.
That's for the Dodgers. Right, Ms. Robinson? She's nodding yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Am I to understand you, Ms.
think-
Robinson,
yeah.
that the Dodgers have agreed to do an MOU between DOT and the neighborhood council system? That's what you just said.
Working with the Dodgers.
Can we stay on subject, folks? Thank
Throw out
you.
neighborhood
Item number
council.
6.
Item number 6 is the city attorney report resolution and ordinance relative to the Neighborhood Purposes Grant Program, authorizing the city's neighborhood councils to make monetary awards or grants to nonprofit community organizations and public schools.
Kevin McNeely, Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. This is a proposed ordinance that's in response to a request of longstanding by neighborhood councils to give them more flexibility in how they spend their funds. This will allow them the opportunity to create partnerships with entities within their communities, with 501c3 organizations and public schools, to use their existing city funds to make grants and gifts of up to $5,000 without a contract to solidify these relationships. Right now, the funding program is based on paying vendors based on goods and services. This will give them more flexibility to allow them to work with actual entities in the community.
Okay, before we move this item forward, I'm concerned that the document does not specify that these are still public funds, and they must adhere to standards related to the dissemination of public funds. I mean, they can't just give it to a school outside of the city of Los Angeles. There has to be a finding of benefit to the city of Los Angeles, I would think.
Yes, there's to be a public benefit.
And the ordinance doesn't speak to that.
Yeah, Peter King, City Attorney's
I mean,
Office.
we have 90 neighborhood councils. Are we going to assume that they understand that? Or are
No.
we going to wait till they blow it?
No. The plan amendment, which is a companion to this, puts the details in it. They have to describe that it's the name of the grantee, the dollar amount, and a description of the public purpose. It's a given that these are public
Maybe we
public
just
funds.
need to improve that language, and maybe we can do that on the way to city council.
I mean, we certainly could put in the ordinance that these are public funds, but that's sort of a given that the neighborhood
No.
councils have
It's a
public
given
funds.
amongst council members. I don't know that it's a given amongst neighborhood council members.
Well, you can speak to that. You do the training of the neighborhood councils.
That is one aspect we hit very hard on in training. Each treasurer receives a treasurer training.
And have we been perfect?
No, we have not been perfect.
I mean, have we had neighborhood councils spend funds inappropriately?
Yes.
Don't they have some people
Okay.
indicted right now for that? Read in the paper?
They're being investigated
So
by
don't you
LAPD.
think we ought to more fully disclose the responsibility?
What I would suggest is that we could develop some language defining what a public benefit would be.
Well, I think the city attorney is in the best position to do that. But
Well,
can't we say language in accordance with this law, this law, this law?
Well, this is how it works with grants of public money to community groups. The grant has to be for a public purpose. The definition of a public purpose, the sky is really the limit. But what the courts look to when they are trying to determine whether something is just way off the charts in terms of a public purpose is they look to the legislative body.
Wait a minute. When you say public purpose, though,
Right.
I believe that the charter gives us guidance to the extent that it has to be a city purpose.
What about a scholarship that they do
A
sometimes?
no, I don't want to ask, a city purpose.
Right.
So when you say public purpose, it has to be a city purpose, which, I mean, if we give it to another city, for example, what's the public purpose? And that's what I'm trying to get at. There's got to be
Right.
ways that
In
we
the preamble to the ordinance, you can see that it says that the monies are to be awarded or granted to public schools located in the city of Los Angeles. That's in the whereas clause.
Say that again?
In the ordinance, in the whereas clause of the ordinance, it says very specifically, for instance,
Okay.
public monies, public grants, these grants have to be to public schools located in the city of Los Angeles. Now, that was something that the department thought would be a better way to go, so that there wasn't this giving it to a public school in another city or what have you.
See, I wouldn't have said that.
Right.
Because there are cities that are outside the city of Los Angeles, but many of the students reside in the city.
They do, but...
But you've excluded them.
No, actually,
Yes, you have.
Well, yes, we have excluded them, but
What I would have
the
said,
concern
what I
was-
would have said
Right.
is to specify the city benefit. Make a finding of benefit.
Well, one aspect of this is that in the consideration process, they're going to have to fill out a form, a grant donation form, that is going to have to be considered in a public meeting, an agendized meeting, and they're going to state what the public benefit is, who's to receive the grant, are they doing any business before the city, and then
Wait.
once issued,
That's a procedural thing.
Right.
It's not in the ordinance.
correct.
Why can't we put it in the ordinance?
Well, I mean, you can put in the ordinance that it's for a public purpose. It's sort of a given, because if they weren't doing it for a public
Okay, I'm
purpose,
not-
it would be a gift of public funds.
Let's do
a-
this. Let's just do this outside of this meeting. This will take forever. We're
Well,
not
it-
penetrating here, so let's just pull it. This meeting is adjourned. Do it. Well, we have. I'm sorry. We have two public comments.
Council member, shall we continue the item? then?
Continue the item. Yeah, but we have Zuma Dog. We also have Christine Peters.
And there are also public speaker cards for public comment. I'll try and be brief on this item.
Sit down with me, and we'll.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
It's a
I think
simple
that's a
thing.
good
It's
idea.
not a big deal. We should be able to crank it out, but rather than send it on to council without a full discussion, let's do it.
I agree.
And then we'll come back.
Good morning, council member. My name is Christine Peters, and I'm a member of the Greater Echo Park Elysian Neighborhood Council, and I've been a sitting board member for 5 years, and I'll be on the board for 2 more years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Regarding this item, it comes with big paws. This item, I've been working on the Budget and Finance Committee, and I actually think that you really do need to keep this in committee, because there are a lot of issues that we've encountered with nonprofits actually can start up very easily, and so there should be language in there that requires that the nonprofit has a history. You can file a DBA and become a nonprofit very rapidly, and we've had that problem within our neighborhood council, people looking for funding to use for quote-unquote nonprofits that actually haven't established themselves as having a public benefit. So I think you really need to look at that as well. We've also been working with our local schools with no problem putting funds towards specific issues that they want to address. We've done some computer software programming with some of our schools. We've helped them with computers. So they've been targeted towards specific items, and I think that making grant donations to nonprofits more so than schools would be a problem.
We continue the matter.
Mhm.
If you could provide some kind of written
Absolutely.
statement, that would be
I
helpful.
actually came here.
Although I have to tell you, if a nonprofit is established, who am I to second guess that they should be excluded from when they're a legal entity? I mean,
Well, that's why I'm saying that I think that the nonprofit issue for grant awards is something.
The finding of benefit, that's fine, but if they were formed yesterday and legally entitled to it, then and the neighborhood council determines that there's a finding of benefit for the city of Los Angeles, and they want to give to them, who am I to tell them no?
No, yes.
That's fine. I'm actually here for public comment anyway.
Okay.
So.
Oh, was that your public comment?
No, that was my number 6. I'm actually here for
Okay,
public comment.
then please proceed with public comment. Oh, we have a whole bunch. You know what? How are we going to do this? I got to go make
Be
a
fast.
quorum.
You need to hear it, so just
Or we can come
establish a total
downstairs.
time for every
We'd be happy to come downstairs and testify in public comment downstairs.
Well, no, legally, we need to have some form of general public comment here. You can just limit the total number of people to whatever time limit you have left. Less than a minute for each.
We're going to lose a quorum downstairs. That's my concern.
Oh.
Hold on a second.
And lose a quorum. How many public comment cards do you have?
At least 6. I'm sorry.
Is this-
Yeah,
oh.
6.
Yeah.
Oh, they do have a quorum. Okay, 1 minute each. Public comment.
All right. Well, good morning. I'm Christine Peters, Greater Echo Park Elysian Neighborhood Council member. Thank you, Issa, but you're cutting into my
No,
time right
I'm
now.
not allowing that.
Anyway, I'm here to speak about.
I want to hear from you.
Okay, could you stop the clock because they just took all of my time?
Please.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
All right. Good morning. I'm here to discuss the Region 1 City Clerk run elections, which unfortunately for us in Echo Park were a disaster. I'm hoping that Region 2 fared better than we did over the weekend, but we had problems with the election. The city clerk did not take our election seriously. We have a rule in our election that you have to be 16 years of age to vote. There were people in line to vote who were asked how old they were, are you 16, saying no, and were still handed ballots to vote. I brought a letter that was sent to the city clerk's office testifying to that. Also, the city clerk run elections allowed people to vote in every single city clerk run election, 8 elections on the same day. I brought that testimony as well. Individuals were allowed to vote in every single election, 8 elections. Yes, 8 elections. This is clearly not a well-run election. The city clerk did not take our rules seriously. They did not allow us to identify stakeholders. I'm sorry?
How many people did that?
I have testimony from one person for sure who did it, who wrote an article about it and published it in City Watch. Doug Eberhardt, who's a neighborhood council member of one of the San Pedro neighborhood councils.
And his purpose was to
show the flaws of the city clerk running an election, and that's here. Also, the city clerk allowed electioneering at our election. In our rules, it states that you have to be 100 feet from the polling place to electioneer and campaign. They didn't do anything about the many complaints that they received about people electioneering in front of the polling place.
Okay.
And I brought photographs.
For what it's worth, I think we ought to have a hearing on this anyway, because it's a new process. So why don't we have the city clerk report back at the next meeting as to how the elections went?
That's great. I mean, we have lists.
I believe a motion needs to be made in full council.
No, not for this. He can set the agenda for the item based on comments, public comment, so that's fine.
No, I want immediately, at the soonest possible point after the election, to hear what happened. I'm not suggesting anything I just want to report back on the conduct of it. I may have subsequent hearings, but
I think it's
just
very
want to hear
important,
from
and it
the,
will be appreciated
city
by the
clerk.
public.
And I think the public probably wants to testify as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to submit the photographs of the electioneering, and I'll let somebody else take their time. Thank you.
Thank you. Darren Hubert? Hey, Darren.
My name is Darren Hubert. I'm the current treasurer of the Echo Park Neighborhood Council. In the recent elections, I was elected to serve as a district rep. I'm here today to speak because I'm concerned about the directions that neighborhood councils are heading. I believe they're losing sight of their goal to serve a neighborhood. I believe they're becoming too political. That became blatantly obvious to me when our current president took office in Echo Park, who happens to be a councilmate of yours sitting here, Mr. Scala. We have always been an eclectic and diverse group in Echo Park, but adding political division has created a difficult environment and what I consider to be disastrous. Meetings are out of control. Name-calling and accusations take place regularly. It's an embarrassment to board members. It's an embarrassment to our community, and it's an embarrassment to this city, in my opinion. I became involved in neighborhood councils personally in 2 neighborhoods when I formed another council in North Hills, and when I became a board member in this council when I moved into Echo Park. I know there's only one of you left, but you are a politician, Mr. Alarcon, and
So are you.
well,
By virtue of being on the neighborhood council?
I view my position there as serving a very local purpose, and
Why?
and I'm concerned about it becoming too broad and losing focus on the local neighborhood. I see it happening in our neighborhood, and we can't deal with agenda items that are local issues, and we end up voting on taking a position on city or state resolution instead.
One thing that I must say, and I was not aware that Jose was running for president at Echo Park, but the one thing I do want to say is, I mean, if I were going to engage in what you call as sort of politicizing the process, I would get people elected in my district. Why would I get my staff to run in Echo Park? But people that work in City Hall also live in the community. And if they want to get involved in the process, that's their choice. So, I mean, that's a curious thing to me, but that doesn't mean that, and to say that the process is getting too political is sort of, I don't even know how to respond to that, because neighborhood councils, by virtue of their existence, are political. And that's the definition of the word, I believe.
Neighborhood councils are to serve neighborhoods, in my opinion. They're not to be mini city
But
councils. I don't believe they were established to be
but
that.
they are political. And I don't know how you can separate that from the process.
I understand what you're
Yeah,
saying
to
about being
somehow
political.
to somehow say that I'm a member of the neighborhood council, but somehow I am not an elected official, I'm representing my neighborhood, that's a to me a pompous statement that isn't correct, in fact.
I
Because
disagree with you.
You are, once you get elected, you are an elected official. You're a politician. And you know, then you have to take the criticism that comes with it.
Oh, I've
Not-
taken
not
a lot of
avoid it by
criticism.
saying somehow I got elected, but I'm not a politician, like the other ones who got elected. That's not being direct and honest. But that's just my opinion as a politician. You're entitled to disagree. I don't have a problem with your concerns. Don't misunderstand me. I'm working very hard to try and create a neighborhood council system that means something for this city. But I'm just targeting some of the specific things you said. You're not going to engender more support as opposed to cause more division. And I think you should hone in on the actual practices that cause you concern.
You can pick at my words, and I'm sure you can find fault in them. My general concern is that neighborhood councils continue to focus on the neighborhoods they serve and not get substantially broader. There's city council to do that, to deal with broader issues.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Councilmember, just a correction. I believe the city clerk was correct that to have the city clerk report back on the elections will require a motion in council. You're only a council member one today, so just procedurally, I think the city clerk was correct.
Okay. Okay. Then we'll make that motion. Bennett Kaiser?
Morning, Councilman. My name is Bennett Kaiser. I'm the Vice President of the Greater Echo Park Elysian Neighborhood Council. I appreciate your giving me an opportunity to speak here today. My comments are also relevant to the recent elections that we've had. The main reason I wanted to testify to you today is that because of the way the ordinance was written for the neighborhood council elections being conducted by the city clerk is the final decision maker on any challenge that comes in because of the irregularities in the election. Most of the problems that we face with this election were at the fault of the city clerk's lack of attention to detail, and in some cases just making a mockery out of our program. If you just mentioned you wanted to see a great neighborhood council system in Los Angeles, it will never happen if the neighborhood councils continue on under the auspices of the city clerk the way we had to on June 12th. I'll be filing a challenge to the election today, and I would like to give to you a copy of it. It's a work in progress at this point. It's not due till 5 o'clock, and there still may be a few adjustments that'll go in.
Thank you. Can I ask you,
Yes.
I'm assuming you think it was worse than the process before.
Much worse.
Okay.
I represented the 13th City Council District on the Elected Charter Reform Commission, and we took neighborhood councils very seriously. I made the motion to put neighborhood councils into the city charter while a member of that commission. And
even before that, I was the only council member who voted for neighborhood councils.
And we appreciate that. In any case, we set a stakeholder as someone who lives, works, or owns property within the neighborhood council boundaries, plus other categories of stakeholder that the neighborhood council sets itself. The city clerk, for example, only provided election material to people who lived within or had addresses within the boundaries. But property owners who own property within the neighborhood council but live outside the boundary were not notified, even though that information is available from the DWP and the Planning Department and the County Assessor's Office. People who work in...
Were they notified by the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment? In
They
the
were
previous
not,
elections?
they were, pardon?
In the previous elections, were they notified by Dunn?
No, but in some of our previous elections, we had got databases from realty boards and were able to make that contact ourselves. People who work in Echo Park but live outside the boundaries also did not receive any notice. A single copy of the election announcement was sent to the address of a business, but there was no instructions saying pass this on to your employees, tell them they can they are stakeholders and they can run for office or they can vote for others running for office. And when that was brought up to the people from the city clerk's office, their response was, well, all we can do is send addresses within the boundaries, and that's not our concern. It was just a very cavalier attitude that they had, and one that will lead the neighborhood councils to failure if it continues.
Okay, well, we will be having a hearing on this.
Thank you.
Isa?
Well, I attend the neighborhood council meetings in my area of Echo Park, and I find them to be dysfunctional. On 3 separate occasions, I have spoken to the board, in particular about the language people use to each other. It is unacceptable and untenable. For example, and I was very concrete when I spoke each time, one member running for office referred to those who lived on the upper area of Echo Park as white supremacists. And this is coming at a time when the nooses are all over. When elected officials speak, some of the board members, well, one in particular, is so rude in how she talks to the individual. I mean, name calling, racist. I mean, without defining, without evidence. One member accused a certain segment, because we made a lawsuit against LAUSD for Site 9A. Some people supported the project, some were opposed. We were accused, those who were opposed, of taking allocated funds from the neighborhood council, diverting those funds to help pay for the lawsuit. That's a charge of embezzlement, and it was going to be investigated. The board, I hold the board responsible for this dysfunctional election that just took place. It's been building up, and I want a power, because the neighborhood council has such power within it. And planning and land use, there are so many issues that we deal with, that to see it subverted in this, I mean, we need the Human Relations Commission to help us, because to attend a meeting, you grit the teeth and you sit through it, and I go home early because you take so much. We need help. But, I mean,
Sounds like it. Sounds like it.
It really is bad, yes.
Is there anything we can do to talk to the Human Relations Commission? Have you expressed yourself to...
Well, I think just politeness,
Mr. Kim?
how people talk with each other.
Politeness is one person's...
I know, but there is
one
a
person's
code of
protocol is
civility.
another
There's a
person's
mentality
infringement
how
of their
people
civil
don't
rights.
resolve
So,
issues.
frankly, some of the examples you gave are within the context of civil rights, and so it becomes difficult to stop. But to train people to be, to provide training to understand
Racist,
it.
and I want you to prove it and show me how, so I can at least learn how not to be. But just to call someone a name, I mean, I personally wasn't, but others were. And it doesn't help a situation. I mean, we live in a society, I assume we're all racist, just by definition of living in the United States. There's a climate. But then you overcome it, and you learn, and you move, and grow.
Well, please express yourself to Mr. Kim.
Pardon me?
Please express those same comments to Mr. Kim, and I will pass those on as well.
Well, he's heard them. I mean, he's sitting here. He's the chair.
No, he's not Mr. Kim. The director of Dunn.
Oh, we are told to file grievances, and I find filing grievances.
I'm not suggesting.
No, I'm
I'm just
sorry,
saying,
whatever our
express your
complaint-
comments to Mr. Kim, and at least allow him to understand what's going on.
Well, from what
From your
I've seen of Dunn and their relationship to our particular neighborhood council, they have been so ineffectual as to be useless. That's my experience on that.
Gloria Soheki? Soheki.
I'm a resident of Echo Park. I've been so for about, I think about 25 years. I've never really been involved with the neighborhood council, but this year I said, well, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time for me. And the polling place was directly across from my house. And I participated in getting some absentee ballots and taking them to the polling place. And that was approximately that day at 2:05. And there were people carrying absentee ballots. They were in front of me, and one was behind me. And I happened to notice that none of them were signed. You know, when I give you permission to take my absentee ballot, I have to sign. I have to sign what relationship you are to me, my friend or whatever. And I heard the lady at the ballot box tell these two gentlemen, and I felt really bad because the two gentlemen did not know what this one was saying. So they took their plastic bags and went to the back of the polling place. And I thought, oh my gosh, I felt sorry for him, but I didn't know what to do. I was on my way to pick up children from school. So later on at 7 o'clock, I took some more absentee ballots, 3 to be exact. Mr. Segala was, in fact, at my garage when I opened up the door. And then he said, oh, it's you. But I went over there with my ballots. But at 7 o'clock in the afternoon, there were 4 kids on Razor scooters going in and scooting around, in and out of the tables in the voting booth. Almost one ran over my toe. Then I went up to, check in with the absentee ballots. Here comes a kid on his bicycle who runs into his mother inside the polling while she was voting. Well, she turns around and the booth starts shaking, So I took the number that says to call if you see anything going, because obviously the poor poll workers, they were looking around like this. I don't know what had to be done. I've been an election judge. I was one for many years in Illinois, in Chicago. I've done this, and I know that what happened there was not good. It was not good what was going on. People were right outside the door, screaming and hollering, and one man was handing little white cards. I could see from my vantage point where I live, because I live up very high, and I was watching the shenanigans that were going on, and I was just disappointed. I don't know. I just thought, well, finally I'm going to support something, and now I'm really disappointed that I did, because I think it was just a big mess. And I'd like to know what happened to those 2 bags of absentee ballots, if they ever got in there, if they, I'm concerned.
Thank you.
Okay?
I don't see Zuma Dog here. But let me just say that given that we switched the responsibility from Dunn to the city clerk, and it was an expedited process, we anticipated there would be problems with the implementation. You never know where those problems are going to emerge, but you anticipate that there will be problems. So I do intend to have the city clerk come in and see how we can continue to improve the process. I don't want Dunn to do the elections again. I just their mission is not to conduct elections. That's the job of the city clerk. If the city clerk isn't doing it right, then we need to upgrade their ability to do it. So I'm not surprised by any means, and if they're and we'll see what it's impossible from this position to know what happened, but I think to have the city clerk come in and tell us how the election processes are going is part of the anticipated process. So we'll have them do that as we do an initial comment. I'll introduce the motion as I go into council today, and then we'll have them report back as soon as possible as to the conduct of the elections. So this meeting is adjourned. I'll still be here.